Hey readers, my name is Jess, and today I'll be talking about the books I read in September with the goal of giving you a better idea of what you can expect from these titles. Let's get into it. Starting off strong, we have Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. After My Friends, this was my most anticipated new release of the year. I love Rebecca Ross's writing. It's so beautiful and magical, and I could not wait to just dive right in. This one takes place in the same world as Divine Rivals, and if you like the Letters of Enchantment duology or the Elements of Cadence duology, I think you would love this one. I feel like this is Ross's most ambitious novel yet, and I thought it was just fantastic. We follow Matilda, who is born the daughter of a god and a goddess belonging to different realms. Matilda is raised in the Underrealm, where she is told she is to be a herald of the gods carrying words between the realms. This isn't necessarily a desirable magic, which is actually a good thing, because in this world the gods can kill one another to gain more power for themselves. But there is a secret about Matilda, one that she's not even aware of, that makes her more than a mere messenger of the gods. The goddess is linked to a mortal lord named Vincent, who she met in his dreams when they were just children. Matilda helps Vincent overcome his nightmares, and when a nightmare becomes reality, he prays to his friend Matilda for help. Matilda, who was also facing her own disaster at the time, did not receive Vincent's message until now, years later when she finds his desperate plea for help. Running to his aid 13 years late, Matilda vows to help protect Vincent and his people when his enemy threatens a battle to gain control over his kingdom. Now, usually I gravitate more towards novels with romantic subplots rather than stories where romance is the central focus, but Rebecca Ross's books are the exception for me. I just really adore her characters and the way she develops these sweet relationships that feel authentic, not to mention the poetic lines about love and connection that just take my breath away. And while there is an epic romance, there's also a father-daughter relationship in this one that was absolutely precious to me. I really appreciate that love was represented in this way too, with a daughter who would do anything for the man that shaped her, and a man who would do the same for the little girl he had a hand in raising. Overall, this is a story about war, power, and destiny, but more than anything, it's about love and sacrifice, and I adored it so much that I can absolutely see myself rereading it in the future. The next book I picked up was The Final Act of Juliette Willoughby by Ellery Lloyd, and I had never heard of this book before, but it was recommended to me after I mentioned my interest in art, and now that I've read it, I kind of can't believe more people aren't talking about it. This story has multiple settings and timelines, as well as multiple points of view as we explore the mystery surrounding Juliette Willoughby, the artist of an infamous painting in surrealist history, whose personal life was teeming with chaos, danger, and potentially even a family curse. Two Cambridge students wanting to learn more about the artist get caught up in the Willoughby family's history and are determined to find and protect her lost masterpiece. It's a thrilling story with love and deception, murder, and loads of drama. As I mentioned, we have three main timelines: Juliette's 1938 Paris, Cambridge in 1991, and a present-day Dubai with those same characters we were introduced to in Cambridge who had shown an interest in Juliette's work after they've established themselves in the modern-day art scene. It may sound like it jumps around a lot, and it does, but the pacing kept me intrigued, and the authors did a great job revealing just enough information at a time to keep me on my toes. I have to say, some of the answers are right in front of you the entire time, and while you may be anticipating certain reveals, the story is still so thrilling that it's impossible to put down. I would describe it like a puzzle. You can identify all of the pieces and even connect some of the more obvious ones together, but you're still waiting to see the bigger picture and how all of those pieces fit into it. And let me tell you, the ending is dramatic and oh so satisfying. Also, Ellery Lloyd is a pseudonym for a husband and wife author duo, and I just think that's the coolest thing ever, being able to collaborate and tell stories together. I mean, talk about relationship goals. I'll definitely keep their work on my radar because I thought this was such a fun read. I would totally recommend it if you're looking for a fast-paced mystery full of drama. The next book I'm going to talk about is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I had been considering picking this book up for about a year now and was finally convinced to do so after seeing the trailer for the upcoming film. I thought the trailer looked great. You had Ryan Gosling playing the lead, Sign of the Times playing in the background, and it gave me a sense of the main character's humor as well as the overall vibe of the story. We follow a man who wakes up in a spacecraft millions of miles away from home, accompanied only by 2 corpses. And if that wasn't enough, he has no memory of who he is, where he's headed, or what his mission is. As his memory slowly returns, he realizes that all of humanity is relying on him to solve this issue that will likely wipe out all life on Earth. No pressure there. Now, our main character, Ryland, ventures outside of our solar system and is literally light years away tackling Project Hail Mary. Naturally, we have a dual timeline, one taking place back on Earth as he and a dedicated team investigate this extinction-level threat and prepare the space mission, as well as 13 Earth years later when Ryland wakes up from cryosleep with no memory of what's going on. As far as the voice goes, I personally really enjoyed it. Ryland is a school teacher, and that is quite evident in the way he speaks. His jokes are a bit juvenile, but he also has this incredibly nerdy side. If you don't like talk about the sciences, like physics, chemistry, or computer science, then maybe this isn't the book for you, but I thought those bits were explained well and not at all complicated or boring. I'm not going to discuss this too much, but there is an incredible friendship in this book that easily became my favorite part of the story. Just very cute, funny, and wholesome, which is nice because the potential extinction of all life on Earth is not very cute, funny, or wholesome. I previously had a discussion in the comments with a reader who pointed out the convenience of Ryland's memories coming back in chronological order, and I can totally see where you're coming from. It may not be the most realistic, but I do think it certainly simplifies the reading experience, and for that reason, I can appreciate that this is an accessible story that's also well crafted, and I would feel confident recommending it to someone who's maybe looking to get into the science fiction genre or even just trying to get into reading. Overall, a maze. If you've read the book, you might appreciate that, and if you haven't read the book, then you might think that I just glitched. But it was a great story with a likable main character, with satisfying growth, and a really precious friendship that kept a smile on my face. The next book I read was Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I think this is the 4th book by Ruta Sepetys I've read this year, and I keep coming back to her because she writes about moments in history that I'm not super familiar with, typically events that I didn't learn about in school, and I find her writing to be very consistent. In this book, we follow a group of refugees trekking through East Prussia in hopes of boarding a ship promising them safety from the advancing Red Army. Led by a young Lithuanian nurse, the group slowly but surely makes their way across the war-torn landscape, but what if the ship they're headed towards can't offer them the sanctuary they were hoping for? There's a small connection between this one and Between Shades of Grey, with Joanna the nurse being the cousin that Lena frequently references. Technically, if you wanted to read them in chronological order, you could start with Between Shades of Grey, which is Lena's story taking place in 1941, followed by Joanna's story, Salt to the Sea, which takes place in 1945. With that said, they're complete stories on their own, so if one sounds more interesting to you than the other, I wouldn't worry about it. I have to say, while I still really enjoyed it, this was my least favorite book that I've read by this author so far, and I think that's because we're alternating through 4 different character perspectives, and with the really short chapters, it felt like the narrative was shifting a bit too frequently. I think I would have preferred if the chapters were just a tad longer because they were literally 1 to 2 pages each, and I would often be sad to move on to the next perspective so soon. However, I think this strategy was effective in sharing this history through the lens of multiple characters with very different backgrounds. A young Lithuanian nurse, a young Prussian man on the run from the Nazis, a Polish teenager with a devastating secret, and a selfish, prejudiced German officer aboard the ship. I will say, because of those ultra short chapters, this book is incredibly fast-paced. You'll likely be at the edge of your seat waiting to find out the fate of our refugees. Like all of Sepetys' books, it's very emotional and does touch upon these really vile parts of the war, but I also found it to provide this sense of hope, especially with those moments of camaraderie between the group making the trek together. I think it's crazy that I've never heard of this ship or its history, so for that reason alone, I would definitely recommend this book. But in general, I would be more inclined to recommend Between Shades of Grey, I Must Betray You, or The Fountains of Silence. Finally, we have Britt-Marie Was Here by Fredrik Backman. This is the story of an older woman named Britt-Marie who decides to leave her cheating husband, find a job, and start afresh. Unfortunately, the only job she could find was as a caretaker for an old recreation center in this tiny, obscure town called Borg. The people of Borg are interesting, to say the least, and the community is quite obsessed with soccer. Somehow along the way, Britt-Marie, who has no interest in sports by the way, finds herself responsible for the children's soccer club. After a long, difficult marriage where she sort of lost herself, this small, seemingly unremarkable town and its residents may help Britt-Marie discover who she really is as an individual. The character growth in this one is exceptional. In fact, I think complete transformation would be a better way to describe Britt-Marie's arc, which is of course very satisfying for you as the reader, but I also love that message that it's literally never too late to start over. We're introduced to Britt-Marie in My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, where she is the uptight neighbor of Elsa. I was kind of indifferent to her for the majority of that book, but I absolutely loved her in this one. Now, while this is a follow-up novel, I wouldn't say it's necessarily required to read My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry to enjoy this one, but I would say you would definitely better understand Britt-Marie's character and situation having that background knowledge. Personally, I really enjoyed both of them, so I would recommend reading them in order, but again, it's more of a spin-off than a typical sequel. In my opinion, Fredrik Backman doesn't miss. I actually think this book is most comparable to A Man Called Ove, so if you love Uva's story, I think you might enjoy Britt-Marie's as well. Beautiful themes of community, self-discovery, and new beginnings with no shortage of soccer references. So those are the books that I read in September. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!